Well, welcome everybody back to another episode of Catholics Live in Discipleship. Today, I'm here with Tom Corcoran, who many people I'm sure you're familiar with through Rebuilt. He also does a lot of great coaching with parishes. And today we're going to be having a conversation around how do we help ourselves or pastors, leaders, how do we help foster new volunteers at the parish? So welcome, Tom. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Darren. Appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Anytime, anytime. Um, what an important topic, though, right? Like,
Absolutely.
how do we help gain, encourage more volunteers, leaders at a parish?
Yeah, well, I think for a couple thoughts just to kind of get us started is one, first of all, we have to realize how vitally important that is to the life of the church. That money and volunteers are kind of the lifeblood of a parish, and so this isn't. I think a lot of times the way we approach volunteers is kind of like a side thing or a side part of what we do, but really it's core to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's not just something we got to do every once in a while, but it needs an intentionality and a strategy all the time. And so, um, yeah, I think a lot of times, again, we put that off to a side, but just this is really important subject. Second, I wish every pastor could internalize, or church leader really, even anybody that works on a staff could internalize two scripture verses or really passages, I guess I'll say. The verses are Ephesians 4, 11 to 12. For God gave some to be pastors and teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry, so the body of Christ be built up. That so often, I think, again, pastors, parish priests, youth ministers, children's ministers, whatever role you have in the parish, we think of that as I need to do the ministry. And
Mm-hmm.
what Ephesians reminds us is that is not our main role. Our
Mm-hmm.
main role is to equip the saints or the people in the pews. And that's a paradigm shift to really think that if to really, again, okay, I know I quote that, no, but really to internalize that and say, my to approach my work all the time and often is how am I mobilizing the people in the pews to serve and to call them into that. And the second is because it's whenever you want to get more people volunteering, you're eventually going to need more leaders. And they go hand in hand. And that would be the Exodus 18, where Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, he sees what's Moses doing. He goes to watch Moses go to work one day, and Moses, from sunrise to sundown, is just sitting there dealing with people's problems. It kind of describes a lot of parish workers and priests today, right? They just feel like
Yeah.
I'm going, meetings maybe and trying to solve people's problems. And when Jethro sees that, he says, what you're doing is not good. You're
Mm.
working really hard, but you need to delegate. You need to give away this work. And again, so both of those passages, the Exodus 18 and the Ephesians chapter 4, 11 to 12, that Paul is writing about, are all about this understanding of giving away work and giving away ministry and empowering people and starting with that attitude. One's all about the leaders, one's about everybody in the pews. So I really think that's got to be a foundational part for parishes.
Yeah, and it's so important what you're saying and what I'm thinking about when it comes to people who have taken on maybe even a staff role at the parish or a significant leadership role is their mentality, like you said, I need to get this done, right? That's their first priority. At some level, yes, you have to make sure the ministry is well organized, it's structured, things are going to be happening. Um, but at the same time, what you're addressing, Tom, is that shift where you also have to be calling and looking to increase the leadership or the volunteers at the parish. You can't do it alone.
You can't, right. And I think one of the other paradigms or the shifts, the mental shifts that need to take place is that it's really a gift to people.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we're afraid to ask people to either give money, and we could, I like talking about that as well, but to serve in some way because, well, I don't want to impose upon them. I don't
Hmm.
want to, and it's a vulnerable thing on our, when to ask anybody for help or but we're not really asking. I think we're inviting people in.
Yeah.
But we have to ask. We know, but
Yeah.
to change that thought, I remember early on, um, Father White, when I came to Nativity, was really wise. He gave me this mentor who happened to direct youth ministry for the Diocese of Baltimore, Archdiocese of Baltimore, Mark Passioni. And Mark was a great mentor to me, just, encouraging me at times, pouring into me. But I remember coming up to, one time, volunteers and getting volunteers came up, and I said, well, I don't want to ask anybody. I don't want to impose. I kind of had this conversation, and he just stopped me. He's like, well, do you like your job? I'm like, most days. But do you like what you're doing about trying to bring people to Christ and bring people to Jesus and bring them into the life of the church? I'm like, yeah, I'm love that I get to do that. He's like, well, why wouldn't you want to share that gift with others? Why wouldn't you want to let other people? That's what you're doing when you ask for people to volunteer. You're letting them be a part of, again, building up the church and bringing people in a relationship with Christ. And um, that's just got to be, again, our mentality. So I think it all does start with our mentality and our heart issues first, and then we can work out, then you get to practical application and the tactics and things like that.
Yeah, and such a great point, Tom, that everybody has gifts and talents, right? God's given them to be used for the mission. We don't, and again, I think, like you said, I think that's a shift, a mental shift, a paradigm shift that has to happen more and more at the parish, that to see that in others, that they
Yeah.
truly do have gifts, to encourage that in others, because sometimes there are people who may feel inadequate, insecure. I mean, I'm sure you have stories where I had this gentleman at one of the parishes years ago, who was part of the men's ministry, and I asked him, how did you get started in this? And he said, for years I sat in the pew desiring to be part of something, but was never asked. I was very,
Yeah.
insecure. And finally, someone just came up and said, "Hey, would you want to be?" And that's all it took, you
Yeah,
know?
I think sometimes we build up these narratives, and not that there aren't some people in the pews that don't want to do anything and just want to be consumers, as we would say. But some people just have to be asked and be given paint the vision of we need you. And I
Yeah.
think when kind of getting to how we ask, I always say it's often not that we ask, it's how we ask. And
Mm.
we don't ask people based on what they need, right? And how it's going to, when we ask people, we got to say, like, when you serve, you're going to become more like Christ. When you serve, you're going to see God in ways, you're going to know God in ways you never would have known if you hadn't. And again, Darren, you and I could probably have some of those stories of, like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I wasn't asked to serve, my relationship with God would be a totally different place. Or when you serve in the church, you have a life of significance. You're making an eternal difference in people's lives. Where else in the world can you do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just have to, and then make it very clear what are the opportunities. But yeah, I think asking in such a way that is painting a vision. And I agree with you. There are a lot of people who just think, well, I don't have anything to give, or I couldn't offer, I'm not holy enough, I'm not good enough. And of course, none of us are good enough. None of us, but that's what God does along the way. You know,
Hmm.
I love one of my favorite stories is the story of Moses. And, I already talked about Jethro, but think about Moses' story. When Moses is walking out in the desert, there's the burning bush. And it describes that experience that he has. And he goes over to see what's going on. And when God speaks, Moses hides his face, right? He can't look at God.
Hmm.
Why? And it comes to the conversation. Well, I don't know you, right? How can I go serve you, God? I don't know you. That's in Exodus 3. I believe it's Exodus 32. Maybe it's 33. I'm not sure quite right address, but where it says that Moses spoke to God face to face as one speaks to a friend. And what happened in between the call of Moses and that passage? Well, Moses worked with God. God had an assignment for him. He worked with him. And over that time, he came to know him. And again, that's what we want for the people in our pews. Like, we want you to be in our ministries and volunteering here because we want you to get to know God better. We want you to move from that person that doesn't really know God to you speak to him face to face. And while prayer is a part of that, I really believe serving in ministry is a part of that. And again, that goes back to volunteering and asking people to serve is not just something over here, it's core to discipleship.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you make me think about, Tom, is there are different moments in one's person's journey where they can be invited, right? Or we can respond to them in their desire. The first being, and I'm speaking in the life of the parish, so to speak. Um, Oftentimes I'll look at your parish website and how people are registered there, and the process that one goes through. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. There's that moment, right, when someone might come to the parish and register with the parish. There's that moment where someone may say, I have these gifts that I want to be used. But even there's other moments later on. But what are some of the ways where you see are great potentials that maybe parishes could be better at and not necessarily are acknowledging, such as when someone registers? What are some of the ways that we could strengthen?
So that we then eventually get them volunteering in the parish. And yeah.
Yeah, or actually respond, or here's my point. I think a lot of parishes in their registration will ask, but don't follow up.
Yeah, I think if you have that in your registration, would you like to volunteer? Yeah, that's number one, right? That is a little basic 101. If someone says, I want to volunteer, you should follow up. I think one of the things we would say is a parish should have an understanding of um, sharing that our ultimate aim is for you to serve. So if I register, I would say having some kind of packet, for us, we've produced books, so we got a book now, but like our Rebuilt Faith book says one of the ways there's a whole section in it about serving and how to become like Christ, you're to serve. And so, but even if you just had a little bit of packet of, hey, as a member of the church, we want to help you grow in your faith, and these are the ways we're going to help you grow in faith, and these are the
Mm,
opportunities, and one would be serving. I think partly we would say at some point in the rhythm of your year, there should be a weekend in which the pastor gets up and invites every people to serve and join the team, and say and talk about that. We have opportunities to serve, and quite honestly, we've struggled to where that should be in the right rhythm of the year. We've sometimes done it in March and spring. We sometimes try to do it right before Christmas because we want more volunteers to serve at Christmas.
hmm
I've honestly struggled with that, but anywhere in the rhythm of the year, there should be a time in which the pastor gets up and a whole weekend dedicated. And this is kind of like you would do for a stewardship weekend, if you do a stewardship weekend, or you would do for a capital campaign. We will do this. Well, a little campaign of like, we want everyone here serving, and here's your opportunity to serve. And now I have some other thoughts on that. And sometimes I think on ways parishes go wrong on that, or it's not as effective as it could be. But there just needs to be rhythms in the year in which we say we invite you to serve. Now, also, I do think we have to encourage those kind of, I call air cover to the ground war, that the pastor says it, but then, like you said, this individual you knew, a lot of times the way you get through that I'm not worthy is that one-on-one ask.
hmm
Um, we do need to create kind of the environment in which we ask individuals and even are asking our current volunteers to be looking for new people they think would be great serving in our parish or serving in the community and inviting them in.
hmm hmm Excuse me. One of the things that I, I'm sure you're aware is out there as well are opportunities where we help people to discern their gifts, or think about their talents. There's Called and Gifted by Catherine Cian Institute. There's um, strength finders out there, that help people. Have you used those? Like, what would be some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on them. I'll tell you a little bit about our experience, and then I'll tell you what my thoughts are. Um, so going back way back, one of the things that inspired us to talk about volunteering in ministry or serving in ministry or serving in the church, volunteering was definitely Saddleback Church and what we learned from them. And um, I don't know if you're familiar, they have a whole thing called SHAPE, which is an acronym for um, spiritual gifts, heart, abilities, personal experience, I think, or personality experiences. Like anyway, and we did a whole thing on that where we walked people through it and we did all that. And I think it's good. I think it's good enough. But at the end of the day, we just kind of had needs. Like, so I remember somebody filling out a whole thing and like getting to this. I'm like, well, will you do this? Because that's kind of what we have right now. So,
Right.
and that's where I think there's a little bit of just there's needs at a parish that we have to serve. And I think we got to start there. And they're just it is what we're already doing. And so I think for people to continue to know their gifts and know what they are is good. But for example, at Nativity, we would just say, well, if we can, I think in developing leaders, there's a more of a process which I haven't figured out yet. I'll be honest, but like we need people to be on our parking team. See, we're going to be a very hospitable church, and that needs people who can park cars and just point and smile. And we need people who can greet at the door. And we need some host team members, and we need some cafe people who are going to serve there. And we need some people to work with our kids and work with our students. And here are really the things we are already doing. And so we want to match you up with the opportunity that's going to work the best. I think
Hmm.
sometimes some of the strengths finders, other things start like we start so much with that person, and then we got to find the perfect thing that fits them. And there's just not enough time. There's just really not enough time to really do that. Now, again, somebody you can have somebody else on, they figured it out, and I would yield to them because I do. Again, one of my verses is Ephesians 2:10. For God is, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, for good works that we might walk in them. And I certainly want people to walk in those good works. Um, and I think that's an ongoing thing. If that's just not a church, that's in my
Right.
life
Right.
outside of church, that's in my work life. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the whole of my person. But I think we have to find the opportunities in the church that we're already doing. And I think so sometimes, I guess just my personal experience, it could be very time consuming to help somebody find where they are in that niche. And just as a church, we don't have that time. And certainly have some conversations with people and give them materials and things that help them reflect upon it. But at the end of the day, as a church, any pastor listening to this says, well, we don't have enough people serving in our kids ministry. We don't have enough
Yeah.
people here. And again, I don't think we should ask that out of neediness because I do believe God will provide those people for that, or that again, there can be enough breadth of ministries that people and volunteer opportunities that will fit people in some way. But sometimes I just feel like the strengths finders, all that makes it feel like we got to find the perfect fit for people. And even in that, I think the way we discover our gifts is to start doing. So those
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah.
long-winded answer to all that, but that's kind of where I come from.
No, you know what it makes me think about, Tom, and I think this is an important aspect about um, building volunteers or people who are helping us with the needs at the parish and outside of the parish, whether it be soup kitchens or whatever it is that your parish deems as the stewardship, is that it truly does foster real community.
Hmm.
And and here's why that came to my mind. There's two reasons. One is local at a parish here in my town that I attend. Um, they have a great coffee weekend. They do it twice a week, twice a month after masses, and you go in there and it's vibrant, and people are talking with one another, even people talking with people you don't know. You know, it's like it really helps build community. So and there are people serving there, you know, and um, but back in 2000, I want to say it was 16, I visited Nativity. I came down, right? And it was a Saturday, so it would have been a Saturday mass. And afterwards, we went into the cafe. Now, I haven't been there in years, Tom, so I don't know what the structure is. I know you guys built a new church, but I remember walking in, and I think they were serving pizzas. Does that make sense?
Sure,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. And I was like, I, the person gave me the pizza was probably one of the happiest people I met. You know, like it to your point where when we're called or asked to serve, it helps us to realize we are bringing God into people's lives, you know,
Yeah.
and so it really helps foster a greater sense of community that I think parishes look for as well.
Yeah.
a vibrancy.
Yeah, and again, obviously that comes out a little bit of our kind of charism of hospitality is really important. It's one of our values, so that's why we have the cafe and why we have again all these we call them all the hospitality ministries. So going back a little to the point, I do think parishes need to be clear. Like sometimes you can't get people for a ministry because maybe that means it should die. Like we ask for
Hmm.
volunteers and we can't get them now. There's also the struggle. We have to do the hard work, but some ministries need in parishes need to be let go because I don't know, the knitting ministry. Like, well, no one wants, but then some ministries you have to be like, no, we have a heart for this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to find the people and make it work. And then I also think we have to be creative a little bit. So, like in our kids ministry, you need people to work with kids, but you need people behind the scenes organizing things for you. Like again, everybody would know this. Like people like to make copies, or people who love organization. We have people in our kids ministry that love being up front and they are presenters and they're really good. There's certain people who hate presenting, right? So again, I do think there is some creativity in what we want to do and finding different roles and breaking up. One of the problems too, we have volunteers is we give them way too much breadth to what the job description is. We
Hmm.
want you to do everything versus we could break that up and invite more people in. So, I do want to say, going back to your question about the strengths finder is there's on one hand, we need to know who we are and what we want to accomplish and invite people into that. And the other time, we can be breaking down roles and opportunities within what we are already doing that will then fit people based on their personality and how God has wired them and created them.
Hmm. Hmm. And here's what I'm taking away. One of the things I'm taking away from this conversation, Tom, is it's doable. You know, and here's what I mean. I think sometimes pastors or leaders, they are worn down and believe that at some level people just don't want to help out at the parish, and it's left to us to make everything happen.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that. I think I wrote down a few things that as we were talking, I think are some good key takeaways. Um, I think it's a matter of just really being different. Like do and being different. Don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think here's the thing. First of all, it takes some intentionality
Mm-hmm.
and hard work. So
Yep.
I think a lot of times is maybe sometimes we say people don't want to serve is because we haven't put enough energy and effort into the communication
Yeah.
and some of the hard work and some of the systems and structures that then make it easier for people to volunteer. Um, Again, we haven't communicated. You do have to say it 20, 60, we say it 64,000 times. You do have to say it over and over again and communicate that as a value. And again, you do have to create some systems and structures that are going to make it easy for people to step in. And we have a whole course on this. We call it our equip courses on volunteer ministry and um, something we kind of all borrowed from another church of like the process of attract, build up, connect, develop, evaluate, and there is work into it. But if we're willing to intentionally put that work in, and again, see it not as like something I got to take care of on the side, but no, something core to what we do, I do think we'll see fruit and see good things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the
And
word
that's the
that,
shift that took place in me personally, right? Again, Father
yeah.
Michael and I, what took place is, getting people to inviting people to volunteer, that sounds too manipulative, inviting people to volunteer into the church is not something over here. It is what we're supposed to be doing. So,
Yeah. And that was one of the words I wrote down, Tom. Be intentional. We have to be intentional, right? Hope doesn't hope is not going to help your parish grow.
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
um
and doing it as an afterthought and thinking of volunteers as an afterthought, hey, we didn't get them. No, you need to cultivate. Again, it is the sowing and reaping is the nature of the world. So if
yeah.
you've not sown into having people volunteers, you're not just can't come to them, we're gonna have a harvest. No, that's not the way it works, right? You have to sow in and through preaching and teaching and talk about serving and talk about opportunities and put them on the website and share wins of like so and so was in this ministry and they had a great let me share you a letter they sent of how much they enjoy working with kids or working on our in
Yeah.
our hospitality or just telling stories from that. So, yeah, but you do reap what you sow, so you do have to sow into it to make it happen.
Yeah. And the other thing, that you just mentioned too is we got to be clear, and there's got to be a process. So when someone says, yes, I'm willing to help, I want to help. Okay, here is what it is that you'll be doing. Like
Right.
people need to know, and that there has to be a support. I don't know how you would say it, Tom, but there's got to be a support system there for them so that when they volunteer, it's clear, there's a process. They're not like, I said, I'm here to help, and I don't, no one's directing me, like no
Right.
one's going to help
Yeah,
me.
we would say this, we say again, attract, build up, connect, develop, evaluate. And the big thing is when you connecting with people, what are you connecting them to? Who's the person I got to report to? Like you said, when I come in, who do I got to go see?
Yeah.
And if I have a problem, who's going to help me?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not all
Yeah.
there on their own. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been great, Tom. I want to, you had said that you had a equip course, right?
Mhm.
How can people connect with that or get a hold of you, or is that something that people can do at at their parish? How would they do that?
Yeah, so it's a whole video course. So if you go to rebuildparish.com and it's under we call it our equip courses. So this is videos on what we do. We have them on small groups. We have them on our whole model. We have them on preaching and teaching. But there's a whole one just on raising up volunteers and getting volunteers into the parish. And so it comes with some videos. There's some handouts with that. And yeah, if you want to check that out, you could certainly go there. And it's a resource. It's one of the things the course is something we use when we coach a parish. So
Hmm.
parishes that work with us, that coach, we coach, they go through that, but we also have it available to people we're not coaching to just use on their own.
Great. Yeah, so I'll make sure that I put that link in our description for the podcast, and also the book. You and Father Mike we talked about the book Rebuilt Faith. So that's a great book. I'll encourage that as well because it's a wonderful book, and there's that chapter in it that Tom had mentioned that you can read. So
Yeah, our hope for that is parish pastors give that out or encourage, and people read about serving, and it's about serving in general, but there's one couple days even on serving in the parish, and it makes your life easier when you're saying that, oh, the light goes off. Okay, they want me to serve not because they just need something, but because they want me to grow in my faith.
yeah, yeah, which is what we all desire, right? That's why we
But we're doing what we do. Yeah.
yeah, that's why we walk with everyone. Well, Tom, thanks again for taking the time to be in on the podcast and having this great, wonderful, important conversation with me. So I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Darren. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, everyone. We'll see you at the next episode of Catholics Live in Discipleship.